Hey everybody, it's Melanie here with Vintage Hill Studio. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be working on a card made with real fall leaves. I mean live leaves. And it's not like a rubbing. I used inks and watercolors and did a few samples to see which ones I like best. I used Distress Oxide and I brushed on some of that. Some was just straight from the ink pad, and I decided I liked either the sprayed Distress Oxide or the ink pad directly on the leaves. And a casualty is that your fingers will get stained, so if that bothers you, this is probably not the project for you. So here are several different oak leaves that I pulled off of my own trees. And yes, folks, here in Texas, it's mid-October, but it was 95 degrees today. Our leaves are still green. Sometimes they fall off in self-defense before they turn colors, but that's Texas. So as you can see, most of the veining is on the back of the leaves, and that's what I'll be using. I used a variety of distress inks and as well as one Memento Rich Cocoa ink. I started on a 4 3/4 by 6 3/4 piece of cream cardstock, and I'll be inking up the back of the leaves, which I think, the veining is much better from the back. So I'm just taking my ink pad and rubbing across there, trying to get down into those veins. And I'm not concerned about any blotchiness on the end of the leaves, because you'll see how this turns out. I just press all around, making sure I get all the tips of the leaves there, which is also part of the interest of inking these. And you can see from there it picks up quite a bit of detail. So now I move on to Distress Oxide inks. And the main thing is your ink pads need to be pretty juicy in order to get down into the veins of all of those leaves. Make sure I get the stem in there as well, and I use a baby wipe to clean up my glass mat. Here I've inked quite a few different leaves. Moving forward with these little bitty ones, and these are tough. The little ones are a little more of a challenge. You still get the veining. You see there I made a little boo-boo on that third yellow leaf, but I'll come back and fix that. So I'm taking a larger leaf with veining and going right over that yellow, and it looks fantastic. I think you could use any type of leaves you have in your yard. This was so much fun, but it's not like leaf rubbing where you put it, a piece of paper over it, rub over with a crayon or something. I've never tried this inking technique before, but I was pleasantly pleased with how it turned out. And you can see there that it didn't quite pick up, so just like with a clear stamp, just go back over it. You can see where you stamped your leaf. So it allows you to go back over in pretty much precise same place. So again, I'm switching out with the different distress inks, coming up with different colors. So I've got the oranges and browns and yellows and reds, just trying to capture what fall colors should be if you're not living in Texas. So I'll keep moving around my paper here, filling in spaces. And I don't want to fill every entire space. I want to see that cream colored cardstock come through, which will actually make the leaves stand out a bit more than if my background were a different color. What I did to these leaves in between inking was I just took a baby wipe and I wiped off my leaf. The ink comes right off of the leaves. Not so much on your fingers. The ink won't come off there no matter what you do. I guess it has to wear off, but it comes off those leaves easily with just a moist baby wipe. Okay, now I feel like I've covered this cardstock pretty well. Getting a few more colors in there. And this is how I fixed that little boo-boo on that yellow leaf over to the left. Like I showed you before, I took that leaf and just went over it and put veining over the yellow. So then I have a two-toned effect on my leaves. The next thing I want to do is smush a little ink on my glass mat here. And then I'll take this little vial of water and I just spritz the inks, swirl it around with my brush. I'm trying to get a liquidy texture here so that I can do little splatters using the same colors that I used on the leaves. Just tap it against my finger here and get the brown and that orangey splatter on my card front. And there you see it. Now I wasn't real happy with the big brown leaves. It looked a little dull compared to the other bright stuff. So here I used the Distress Oxide peeled paint, which is a beautiful muted green. And I'm going to take my brush and I watered down that ink again. And I'm going to get it to a watercolor consistency and just lightly touch my leaves. Now I didn't know how this was going to work out. But because the Distress Oxide, now this is going over the Memento Rich Cocoa, so it does not bleed like the Distress Oxide inks do. I just did a watercolor effect, and you're going to be able to see that I can still see the veining in that brown I used. The brown ink comes through the green, and that's because I've watered that green down so much it gives this watercolor effect, and I'm really liking it. So I decided to go over all the brown leaves with this green, and I'm thinking, well, that's a great pop of color. I have to keep adding some water here because the ink dries out fast. I'm liking that pop of color. So yep, I go over the brown, but then I decide to just fill in some space here and there with a wash of this green. Just a very light wash to carry that color around my whole card panel. So as you can see, this is very easy to do. And I've got very little water on my brush. In fact, sometimes I'm doing a dry brush effect just for a very light green. And of course, this will dry back even lighter as the ink dries. But look how that's filling in with some extra color without covering the whole card panel. And I think it makes all the other leaves really stand out. So here's a close-up. This is with the splatters and the green peeled paint just kind of brushed on. Dry brush effect. Next I'm going to go to the sentiment that I'll be using on my card front. This is a Quick Cuts die. And it is very scripty and very beautiful. I'll be working on a 5x7 card base. So I'll be ready to add my panel to that. And I decided that looks a little bland. So I brought in that kind of olive green color. This has little dots in it, which helps break up and give a little texture in the paper. I'll do a mat of that and a mat with brown paper. And I just incrementally cut it down. So the green mat's 4 7/8 by 6 7/8, and the brown was 5 by 7. I'll get those adhered down onto my card front, starting with the brown. I think that just frames out my little panel nicely, and I only wanted a sliver of color because I really don't want to detract from my beautiful leaf prints. And I thought the green was less competition with my leaf prints since I have a little bit of green in there. And I want the orange, golds, and browns to stand out. So my secondary mat was this olive green, which complements my panel perfectly. Okay. Then I'm going to take some paper raffia in this brown color, and I'll wrap it around my card front 3 times using adhesive on the back to hold the raffia as I wrap it. I'm not worried about dimension from this raffia because it's just paper and it flattens out just fine when you get it all done here. So it's not too bulky. Alright, so that's stuck to my adhesive there. I'm going to gather it 3/4 up there towards the top with another little piece of raffia, which I will tie in a knot. I don't glue this though, I just tie it in a knot so I can slip it up and down wherever I need it after I get my sentiment adhered to the front. So now I'm going to pop up this whole panel on foam tape. And I just try to stay away from the edge so you don't see the foam tape from the side of the card. So it doesn't really matter which order you put your foam tape, just make sure you cover the majority of the area of your back of your panel. And this is really great for just a little pop of dimension, because the card really is flat on the front. I mean, you've got all those leaves going on, we're going to have that beautiful sentiment in there, but nothing else is happening there. So popping it up on foam tape gives it a little bit extra interest. Almost done with the foam tape. Okay, then I will start peeling off the backing from each of these pieces. I was thinking, good thing I'm not in the profession of waxing people's eyebrows or lips the way I rip this stuff off. Better stick to art. Alright, so I get that over my two panels, my panel over my two mats, and then here is that beautiful Give Thanks die that I showed you earlier from Quick Cuts. I think I'm gonna put those about right there. So I like to take Aleene's Tacky Spray, and I have an old box I use with some parchment paper or wax paper down in the bottom. And I change that periodically. I'll spray this. This is such a fine little script that the spray works so much better for me than glue. And it's a permanent spray. So I get my thanks adhered down, and then I have to work with the give a little bit, and I'll be able to work under that raffia because I didn't glue anything on the front with the raffia. So I can slip my G under there in the give and get that positioned exactly where I want it. Give it a press, and that's all adhered down. And then all I have to do is add the dot on the eye. There we go. Simple, because you just don't want to take the attention away from those beautiful leaf impressions. Okay, I'm giving my raffia a little haircut. And I can move it up or down wherever I need to. I think that gives it a very natural finish with the paper raffia. Next, the stamps for the inside of the sentiment are from Hampton Arts, and also an Inkadinkado acorn stamp. So there's the inside of my card. I always finish off the outside with my stamp. And another look at the outside front. Now, and the envelope, please. These are the stamps I'll be using for the front of my envelope. This is how it turned out. I even splattered something on the front there. I used that acorn again on the back, which ties in nicely with the inside. I line my envelope, and you can see I have other YouTube videos on how to line your envelopes if you're interested in learning how to do this. It is so simple and takes less than 2 minutes. So there's our finished envelope and our card. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you will give it a try. If you like this, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to see more videos. Happy crafting, everybody!